Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this second session in our Animal Shelter Law Summer Series. This series is brought to you by the American Bar Association's Companion Animal Law Subcommittee, the Animal Law Committee, and the Tort Trial and Insurance Practice section. Today's program is on social media savvy animal shelters. My name is Megan Senatori, and I'm the Associate Director at the Center for Animal Law Studies at Lewis and Clark Law School. I also co-chair the ABA's Companion Animal Law Subcommittee. Today's presenter is attorney Katie Barnett, and I'll introduce Katie in a moment. But before doing so, we wanted to share a bit about the plan for today's session. This session runs for an hour, and we will reserve about 10 minutes before the end of the session to take your questions. You can submit your question anytime during Katie's presentation through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. A note that today's session is being recorded and it will be shared on YouTube and on social media after the event. So please keep that in mind when framing your questions. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce our speaker. Katie Barnett is a graduate of the University of Kansas School of Law. During law school and after, Katie worked for Best Friends Animal Society. After traveling across the country working with animal shelters and local governments, Katie opened Barnett Law Office in Lawrence, Kansas. There, she focuses on animal law and municipal law, and she represents pet owners, municipalities, nonprofit and municipal animal shelters, as well as trains law enforcement on animal issues. She is also a past chair of the Animal Law Committee. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Katie.
Thank you so much. I am very excited to be here. So I will get started and share my screen. Okay. Today we're going to talk about social media savvy animal shelters. As Megan said, I am Katie Barnett. I have Barnett Law Office. We're located in Lawrence, Kansas. And our practice is entirely animal law. We are civil, we do civil actions, criminal actions like special prosecution on animal cruelty cases, but also some dangerous dog defense. My primary work is with animal shelters across the states of Kansas and Missouri. What we're going to talk about today is something that I have just found to be so fascinating and an emerging area of law with animal shelters that I represent. So today we're going to talk about social media policies on animal shelter pages, which is like more external social media. And then social media policies for employees and volunteers, which is more internal social media policies. And then we have we'll wrap it up with some fun stuff with influencers, celebrities, and the FTC. I'm not going to talk about, what you do to assign the social media page once a staff member leaves or anything like that. It's going to be a little dry legal discussion in the beginning, and then we'll kind of apply what we learned later on in the presentation. I just do have to say, I find this topic to be terribly interesting, but I won't have the answers, all of the answers for you today. I really want to present you with considerations for your animal shelter, for your social media policies, and then also kind of talk about the trendiest trends going on that you as an organization should consider. So we have so much to talk about today. Okay, first things first. The limitations to consider for social media begin with whether or not you operate as a public or private entity. And some of you may be like, oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think we're a private entity, but we also receive government funding. So if you're not a city shelter and you're private, but the majority of your income comes from a city contract, are you public? And what if just some of your income, like 30% of your income comes from a government contract or multiple government contracts? Are you a public entity? And I just, am going to be super annoying and have to tell you that that is really a state-specific question. It depends on how your state treats that definition. There's no universal or federal test for social media. The test is really state by state on the definition of a public entity. That definition could be found in your state statute. Again, depends on what state you're in. Sometimes the state says you're a public entity for like public records and public forums, but not for liability. And so I definitely recommend talking to an attorney. For example, I'll just throw out Missouri. For the Missouri Open Records and Open Meetings, what's called the Sunshine Law in Missouri, the definition for maybe a shelter in Missouri, if any of you are located in that state, a quasi-governmental body is a person or corporation whose primary purpose is to enter into contracts with public governmental bodies to perform certain public functions. And so, just as an example, I think that, sorry, I think I skipped ahead. As an example, you could find that an animal shelter in Missouri is potentially a public entity. So to be safe, some of the questions you could ask an attorney in your jurisdiction is, do you receive taxpayer funds from the government? Maybe you should consider yourself a public entity for all kinds of different reasons. So that's our first inquiry. Next, we're going to talk about the First Amendment, because our questions today are, what right and authority do you have to control content on your shelter social media page? And then what right and authority do you have as an employer to control content on your employees' pages? And so this is important because if you are a public entity, then there are stricter laws about how you regulate your social media pages. And just quickly, I don't want to confuse you with all kinds of different terminology today, but if you hear me say public entity, governmental body, state actor, the state, that essentially means the same thing. It means you receive taxpayer dollars and you belong to the public at large, if that makes sense. So it is firmly settled, and you see here on my third bullet point, that under the US Constitution, First Amendment, the public expression of ideas may not be prohibited merely because the ideas themselves are offensive to some of their hearers. Official censorship based on a state actor, public entity, maybe public shelter, subjective judgment that the content of the protected speech is offensive or inappropriate is what we call viewpoint discrimination. What is an example of viewpoint discrimination? The classic example for animal shelters is someone criticizing your euthanasia decisions or numbers, and you decide to delete that comment. You cannot censor or prohibit that kind of speech because you don't like it or agree with it. And there are a couple of reasons we'll go over today. So what authority do you have to control your shelter's social media pages? It's your page, right? Like, you created it. You should be able to regulate what's under your name and logo, what is said there, what people associate with your animal shelter. But the First Amendment forbids the state, again, public entity, animal shelter, forbids the state to exercise viewpoint discrimination in either a limited or designated public forum when the limited public forum, even when the limited public forum is one of its own creation. That means your page. So the state, that's you. If your government shelter or an attorney explains to you that you might be. But I do want to say here, you do not have to let the comments on social media run wild. So there is viewpoint discrimination that you need to be careful of, but comments that could be deleted on your social media page include like true threats, incitement to violence, obscenity, defamation, but we have to be very careful with defamation, because if there's an issue of public concern, then sometimes if someone strays a bit from the truth, it can still be protected. And then we have like spam or disruption. You guys see those comments all the time. Maybe if you guys are social media savvy, which, I don't know that I am, but I'm learning so much and I've had an excellent intern help me. You can filter out a lot of those spam comments. So what is viewpoint discrimination that's not euthanasia? So I'll give you an example. Lawrence Humane Society in Kansas, they posted last month that they're excited to sponsor the Pride Festival. They're going to be at the parade. They're going to be in the park. They're going to have some new merch, new temporary tattoos. Adoptable dogs will be at the party in the park. I think we can all anticipate what happens next. We get a lot of comments. And so the first one here says, "What a joke. This makes me nauseous," essentially. Lawrence Humane tactfully responds back and says, "Hey, if you don't like it, you don't have to follow us. You can see your way out." But then the obscenities start, which I have kindly redacted for you. Blank off, you virtue signaling blanks, you work with dogs. Now, can Lawrence Humane delete those comments? Well, it depends. And the test depends on whether or not Kansas considers Lawrence Humane a public entity for purposes of a public forum. What is the specific language that's being removed or censored? Is it a perceived threat? Really? Is it spam, disruption? No, not really. Is it just offensive and inappropriate? Yeah, it is. I think we can probably all agree on that. So one of the ways that you can protect yourself a bit is to have a code of conduct, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. What if this comment was critical about your euthanasia practices? Well, I think that you would run afoul of the First Amendment by deleting that comment. So the issue is one of the issues here, and I've presented many over a short period of time, our first 10 minutes, whether or not the comments are a matter of public concern. Is the way someone feels about Pride Month a matter of public concern? Maybe. But is taxpayer-funded euthanasia of animals a matter of public concern? Yeah, courts have found absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit more about matters of public concern later. So externally, your social media page, it's public. You set it up to get public input, showcase your animals, solicit responses and interest in animals. More likely than not, it is a public forum under the law. How do you protect yourself and the integrity of your page? Have a social media policy posted, or what we call code of conduct. Hopefully all of you have that there. Hey, no swearing, no discrimination, no threats. Your comments will be removed and potentially you be removed. And then if your classification as a public entity is maybe in question, a court would look at your code of conduct to see if you've, framed what the rules are for operating and commenting on your page. And then another consideration is your removal of comments haphazard, or do you have a policy that is consistently enforced? There are keyword filters that can be used to ensure consistent enforcement, but you have to make sure that those keywords are not simply a regulation of speech because it disagrees with the message you want to convey as an animal shelter. So those are some considerations. And now we're going to move to social media policies for your employees and volunteers. And I like to think of this as like your internal social media policies. I love this picture from Casey Pet Project, and I think we all wish that our employees would post sweet content and wholesome content like this. But what if one of your staff members is at a family barbecue and has a middle finger up with her mom? Is that something that you should discipline an employee for? Can you regulate that posting on their personal social media page? And should you really care? I think we know that we do care. We do care about the image that all of our staff members out there give and put out to the public. But also they need to have their own freedom of expression, and there's a balance there, and a balance certainly that courts have considered. So for hiring, first bullet point, you guys know we don't look at social media pages for hiring. The end. Just so we're all on the same page. We all know we're not supposed to do that. But when you have a social media policy internally for your employees and volunteers, you really want to balance your reputation, especially if you receive government funding, with your employees' freedom of expression. And one of the ways this starts to kind of seep into what the work that you guys are doing in the community as an animal shelter is when they start commenting on maybe city policies or your own shelter policies. And believe it or not, that happens all the time in the public sector with law enforcement officers and teachers. So we have a lot of really good case law because they are oftentimes very vocal about what's going on with policymakers in their jurisdiction. So here's a good balancing test for your internal social media policy and how it's enforced. So one, determine whether or not the employee spoke as a citizen on a matter of public concern. A matter of public concern, courts have interpreted as, policy decisions by the city. Other matters of public concern, certainly this was happening a lot during COVID policies, law enforcement policies, surveillance, ordinances, maybe the funding of your animal shelter. Those are all matters of public concern. And so that kind of speech is generally protected. If it's not a matter of public concern, there's not a lot of First Amendment protection. But if there is, and you would like to discipline an employee or something like that, was there justification for treating this employee differently than you would treat a member of the public? So if someone comments about a euthanasia policy or someone comments about handling of an animal, is there justification for treating that employee differently than you would treat a member of the public that expressed the same concern? Okay. Your social media policy should have a lot of this stuff, and all of these regulations are generally okay. Courts have found these to be okay. You can prohibit criminal or dishonest conduct on social media. Anything that seems to be a conflict of interest with the animal shelter. They say something like, I don't want you to fund the animal shelter. The misuse of their position if they're advocating as a staff member without authorization. Use of shelter time and property, that's when they're doing stuff on social media while they're supposed to be working and they don't have authority to do that. And then, of course, the unauthorized disclosure, like confidential information, non-public information. And we all have that, right? Because we're taking in animals, we hold them for 3 days, or sometimes we hold them for animal cruelty cases. Sometimes we hold them as dangerous dog cases. And so a lot of that information is not public. And so, you don't want pictures taken of certain animals. So you can have all that kind of language in your social media policy for employees and volunteers. Then, of course, you have egregiously offensive, deliberately false, knowingly false, and disparaging your employer comments. And those comments are that's fine to regulate. But if it has anything to do with labor controversy, then the National Labor Relations Board and Act have some comments about that. So you can't prohibit your employees, and some of this may be new to you, but you can't prohibit your employees from talking about the wages they make, any wage disparity, anything that they want to talk about as far as the working environment. You can't stop that. That is absolutely their right. But and so these are all things that you can regulate. The last bullet point there, publicly commenting on a matter of public concern is essentially, universally, any state will say that, minus some fact-specific inquiry, you cannot regulate that. So now I'm excited to kind of jump into, we've laid the groundwork here, and let's apply some of this law and think about this in this. These are like the trendiest things going on, I think, in animal shelter social media law. And the first thing that I want to talk about that made me really want to do this CLE, or not actually give it, but hear from like an expert on social media, but and animal shelters, but I guess there's like no one out there. So I'm your person for now. Monetized accounts. What is a monetized account? We've laid the boring groundwork, so let's talk about this. Different platforms have different language for what a monetized account is. And this is essentially when people can get paid for their social media posts. Different platforms call it different things. TikTok, you can get into the creator rewards program, and then you get to post series, which is premium content, and sometimes it's behind a paywall. So you could get, if you were a part of the creator rewards program, you could get post series and you could get money. People could subscribe to your TikTok account. I feel so old. I feel like I don't know all the terminology. I'm sure half of you are out there rolling your eyes going, yeah, we already know all this. But I think it's important for you as animal shelters to really understand what goes on behind the scenes, because it is important for your own policy. And like Instagram, you can apply to a professional account creator. And once you're a creator, you could have ways where you earn recurring monthly income by offering exclusive content to your subscribers. And usually you have to be 18. And then, you see over here on this graphic, advertise with you. Want to make sure you have a big reach before they start giving you money. So has this happened in an animal shelter? Has this become an issue? Yeah, it has. It happened in Austin, and I am not familiar with this case, but boy, I read that headline. Austin Animal Services employee used shelter animals to expand social media followers and earn money, and was disciplined for it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have no idea what this is about. And so I dove in 2022, and that's kind of how this presentation came about. So what do you do about employees who have monetized accounts? Maybe they have monetized accounts because they're, kids are really cute. Maybe they don't necessarily use your shelter animals. And I think those are two different things. But I have had clients call me, and, on one hand, I had a client call me last year and say, I want you to help me prepare a social media policy that prohibits my staff and volunteers from posting about our animals. The only people who should be monetizing our animals should be our organization. Volunteers shouldn't get money for that. On the other hand, I've also had a client who will go over here momentarily, who had an employee who had a monetized account and said, help me manage this. How can we leverage this for our animal shelter? And how can it be a win-win? So, do you let them do it? Do you not? I don't know. Let's talk about it. So this report, essentially this Austin Animal Services employee, she had a few videos, they became monetized, it was like 10,000 views. And then, an animal that she posted, she was caring for got 100,000 views. But the city of Austin was found that she abused her position when she used her access to shelter animals to expand her social media followers. And at first you're kind of like, what? But then you get into the code of conduct, standards of conduct, which every city has that I've ever seen, and that hopefully your employee handbook has at your animal shelter. But here's the line, I think, that for perhaps all of us, is that this monetized account, this employee then asked all of the followers to make donations, not to the animal shelter, but for a personal expense. And that's kind of, I think that's what triggered the investigation. And there's a report about this if you'd like to read about it. The report is public and online, so you can kind of go in and see what the code of conduct was and then what this employee did. But so to me, it's like on the face of it, she posted some animals, she got a little money. But it's a win-win. Don't we all want to pay our staff? If we could afford to pay our staff more money, whether it's a law office or your animal shelter, I think that we all would. And so these people are earning a little extra income. Good for them. And they're posting animals that otherwise wouldn't get exposure, because certainly most of you already have a social media account that's official for your animal shelter. But this is extra views and reaching people that your account may not otherwise reach. But this person violated the Austin Code of Conduct because she didn't report that outside income. And what does the outside income look like? It could be anywhere from $20 a month to this person earned about $8,000 in 11 months. Again, so in Austin, they found that no city official or employee should use a city facility or equipment, etc., to be used for a in a personal manner. And that was a violation. And then the final straw, like I said, was this little strip here that I have, is that this employee violated the code of conduct on abuse of power. And abuse meant that she used her employment for personal gain or favor from a citizen. And there's more to the story. We don't have time to go into it, but it is my understanding this employee was separated from employment. And everything is public. You can check it out and really go through the decision making that the city of Austin had. But there's another way that you can approach this. And you can have an employee who has a monetized account and allow them to post it. And so meet Katie Grissom. She has over 3 million followers on TikTok. And when I was talking to somebody about this presentation earlier this week, someone was like, "Oh, she shows up in my feed all the time." So Katie used to work at KC Pet Project. She worked there in Kansas City, Missouri for several years. And she has several other social media channels. This is an example of a shelter embracing an employee's monetized account. You can see just here on this little video that she posted, she asked for donations of $100 and she got over $1,000 for one video. When I spoke with Katie, she estimated that she has donated or turned over nearly $30,000 to KC Pet Project from her monetized accounts. Today, she works as a brand content strategist at Shelter Animals Count. So what kind of videos are okay, and what kind of videos was Katie posting? So I'm gonna hope this video works. Classic Zoom, fingers crossed here.
Earlier, I saw a dog in the green districts that I really wanted to meet. On her kennel, it says use baby talk and use hot dogs. Skylar is only 9 months old and is labeled shy and fearful. I was happy to see that just after a few treats, she was more than willing to stand up and take some treats from my hand. She then proceeded to sniff my face. As I was in the kennel with her, someone came by to talk to me, and she did retreat back to the corner. But after they left, she walked her way back over to me. At this point, I hadn't touched her. I was allowing her to come up to me and sniff me and do whatever she wanted just to be comfortable. I could tell that she was curious and maybe ready for just a little bit of interaction. After giving a little kiss to my hand, I decided to pet her head, and this is when everything changed. She immediately laid her entire weight up against me and began to climb into my lap. This girl is still a puppy. She's only 9 months old, like I said, but she is big. This did not stop her, though, from getting into my lap. At first, it was just her front end, but slowly but surely, she made her way around and sat down into my lap. Considering the time that it took me to get into her kennel and for her to set into my lap, this has to be some kind of record for me. Skylar does have some sensitivity issues, so I was paying attention to where I was touching her and her reactions. I stayed mostly around her head just to be safe. We finished our time together with her laying down beside me and really honestly as calm as can be.
Bloop, TikTok. Okay. So some of the questions, if you're an attorney in the audience, you might be like, oh my God. Okay. Was she compelled by her employer to post this? No. Katie wanted to benefit the organization, and in several of her videos, which you can still find online, Katie calls this her dream job. But could a shelter compel a staff member to post to their personal social media if they find out that they have a monetized account or a big following? No. No, you can't do that. Could it be added to their employment contract? Maybe they're in the marketing department and it's something that actually you mutually agree to. Perhaps. And then what you need to do at that point is help ensure the public knows that that social media account is honestly a part of her employment. And at that point, her employer has usurped her personal social media. And if it's in line, which has its own set of case law, which I'm not going to go into, and its own set of policies. If you do want to have some kind of arrangement like that with an employee, it's very complex. Do not recommend. But what if she raises money? What if that $1,000 she raised off that previous video, she raised it and went directly into her checking account and she didn't link it directly to the shelter's donation page? Does she have to give the money to them? Well, we'll jump into that next. The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, regulates that kind of stuff and probably would take some work by your animal shelter, but would definitely get it done if she didn't hand over the money that she was, raising for the animal shelter. What if she posted something negative? Could she be disciplined or lose her job? Well, I think this is where we talk about all the things that we discussed the first few minutes. What kind of shelter is it? Is it public or private? That depends on, it depends on the state that she's in. It depends on her employer's policies on posting to social media. And it certainly depends on what she said that you find to be disparaging. Potentially, that was a matter of public concern. And it also depends on what her job arrangement is. As an attorney, I see all of these on social media advertised, all of this apparel. And like there's one sweatshirt that says, "It depends." And like I wanted to wear something like that today because I feel like that's going to be my answer to all of your really awesome questions at the end.
Earlier, I saw.
So the other option you all can do is you can simply have a no social media policy. Vancouver, to the best of my research, the Vancouver City Run Animal Shelter still has a no social media policy. The city has posted, but does not allow any volunteer staff members or the shelter itself to have its own social media. And that's certainly a route that you can go. Okay, so options for employees with monetized accounts, you can allow it, you can prohibit it, or you can have a hybrid, which would use an employee handbook and internal policies. Some of the things that you need to have in that handbook. When can you post? On or off the clock? Maybe it depends on their job title. Are they a cat caretaker? Should they be cleaning out litter boxes and feeding and watering cats, not posting on social media? Or do you have a shelter population that is small enough that that could be part of their cat care job? Are they in marketing? Can they tag along? Is it part of their job to get videos and content for your website or social media? You just a good policy is that you cannot mandate fundraisers. Disclosure of outside employment should be appropriate. That's really how you find out that folks have a monetized account. And then not using your shelter for private gain, like they're not raising money for a dog surgery and then turns out it's their own dog. And then the things that you can still regulate, confidential information, even if you allow it, is confidential information, harassment, threats, discrimination, and something that may be damaging to your reputation, like undermining public trust, your mission, and any issues with public safety, legal matters. But also always remember that First Amendment. And then anything that would be maybe in conflict, you can prohibit something that may be in conflict with their official duties. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about today, which is super fun, is the FTC. Maybe the Federal Trade Commission isn't super fun, but celebrities, influencers, and the FTC. 20 years ago, you could not get access to a celebrity because we didn't really have a lot of social media. You had to like search for their agent and send a letter by the postal service, if you guys have heard of that. But now you can just slide into their DMs and say, hey, saw you like my picture, would love to have you out for a tour. And so just the next couple of slides, some terms of art to keep in mind. Is a celebrity. A celebrity is someone who's already famous for doing something. Or Kim Kardashian here, who's famous for being famous. And then you have an influencer. That person their focus is building a large audience with a goal of like leveraging a brand or leveraging products. They kind of see it as their job. And then a content creator, you all are content creators. You all, whether you're employees on your personal accounts or you as an animal shelter, content creators share valuable and entertaining information and original content. Think of like podcasters and you. And what is the FTC? The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, their job is to protect consumers from unfair or deceptive business practices, among other things. And so that's kind of what applies here. So, let's see. The biggest thing with the FTC is disclosures. If the person, celebrity, influencer, derives a benefit from the brand, then there has to be some kind of disclosure on a social media post or video. Gosh, what is a benefit? Well, it's showing that there's some kind of material connection, which could include, it could be employment or it could be some financial gain. And just so you know, financial relationship can also mean receiving free products because, hey, I'm going to send you this outfit or this dress or these shoes or this t-shirt. If you just mention our brand, that's still a benefit. You're still deriving a benefit from that brand. Well, is an animal shelter a brand? Is an animal shelter a brand or a product? We don't have a ton of good case law answering that question. Remember my shirt, it depends. But probably yes. And you could fall under the FTC rules, and there are a lot of legal questions here, but like you don't want your social media account being shut down by the FTC. So just be careful, consult an attorney in your area about what disclosure should be made. Because we want to have those connections. We want, if a celebrity or influencer wants to showcase our pets or our organization, yeah, we want to have it done, but we want to do it right. Um, and so what should that disclosure be? Well, generally, those are called endorsements. And disclosures or endorsements should be made even if they weren't asked to mention the product on their social media. And so you can do that through we all see like hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored. But that's not the only way you can do an endorsement. You can do, and we're seeing this all the time now. People are going so far, brands and products are going so far as to ask people, celebrities and influencers, to simply like their post. Would you come on and like my post? Because that is also seen by the public at large as an endorsement. Likes, tags, other pins, that shows that people, those celebrities like our product or our brand. Um, okay, so just thought I could put a personal touch on this. So Heidi Gardner from Kansas City. She is an incredible comic. She is a star of Saturday Night Live and like my favorite to watch, quite frankly. And so Heidi loves cats so much all over her social media. So she was invited out for a tour. She goes to KC Pet Project. She meets some animals, and of course, why would KC Pet Project not give her some swag, t-shirts, all that kind of stuff? No one asked her to post anything, and she hasn't posted anything. But if she does, if she goes back and adopts an animal and puts on her t-shirt from the shelter and has a picture with her kitten, does she need to say, and she's like, thank you so much for my new kitten Bashful or whatever the cat's name is. Does she need to put hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored? No, you don't have to do that. Probably not. But she does need to maybe disclose that she got a free t-shirt. I think that that is the safest bet. And if it happens, I don't necessarily think you're going to get fined by the FTC. But it's just a good idea. But all of these social media influencers and celebrities, they have teams of people who know that they need to do that. And so she could say, thanks, KC Pet Project, for the free shirt, or thanks, KC Pet Project, for my kitten, or whatever. And so that's generally enough. So I did get to meet her. Very, very exciting. She was incredible. So the very last thing we're going to talk about today is, I just have a scenario. I don't want to leave you with this thought. Because once I started diving into this, I started going, oh my gosh, but what if this and what if that? Okay, so what if you're a Hills shelter? I'm not trying to play favorites. I just know a little bit more about Hills. They're located 30 miles away from me. Hills Animal Shelters, if you guys don't know, I think half of you on this call at least probably know, because they have over 1,000 shelters across the US that participate in their animal shelter program. Those Hills Animal Shelters get food at a reduced cost. They're eligible for grants from Hills, but sometimes in those agreements, they'll have restrictions, like you can't provide other food brands to your pets. You cannot send home other food brands. You can't showcase or have depictions of other food brands. And I don't know necessarily this precise language if you're a Hills shelter, but let's pretend that you're a Hills shelter. And you're a Hills shelter, you're with their feeding program, and you allow your employees to monetize their social media accounts with shelter pets. From your organization. And then you talk to your attorney says, yeah, you can do that if you want to allow them to showcase shelter pets, but have something, and the language they come up with is, employees may utilize personal accounts to promote shelter pets. So long as the language used is consistent with the mission of the organization and is not disparaging. And I feel like maybe some attorneys might be seeing where I go with this, but oh my gosh, then you have this post from one of your employees with a monetized personal account. And it says, I've been working on upgrading what is going into my body. Why wouldn't I also upgrade what my dogs consume? I only want what's best for them, and Sundays for dogs, air dried food, blah 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 blah. What do you do? I don't know. Call your attorney is my answer. Um, it's just this stuff is so rapidly evolving. There are so many different considerations. And so these are just some of the things that spin around in my head every day when I'm consulting with my animal shelters. And I absolutely love what I do, and I'm so lucky to get to represent some of the most effective and community focused animal shelters in the Midwest. So you know, everything is fact specific, and take it state by state, fact by fact, and find an attorney in your area who might be able to help answer some questions. So with that, I will try very hard to answer questions if you have any. And I think I actually ended like 1 minute early.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. That was so insightful. And I have to tell you, the Companion Animal Law Subcommittee was really eager when you proposed this topic because there's so many emerging issues, so many complicated issues, and you have very aptly showed why this is an emerging topic in companion animal and animal shelter law. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. We are going to turn it over for questions. I gather that many in this audience may feel a little stressed after hearing the presentation about what you're doing in your own individual situation. The Q&A is open. We are recording, but I should note that only panelists and hosts can see your names in the Q&A, so I hope that doesn't inhibit anybody from asking questions. So while we wait for questions to come in, I have one for you, Katie. On some social media platforms, you can turn off the comments. If you are a public entity, do you have an obligation to host a forum and to allow comments if you know the answer to that? Or can you just turn them off so nobody can comment? And I am probably asking, I don't know if it's come up, but I was thinking of it when you were presenting.
Yeah, so again, I think that's a state-specific inquiry because it really depends on what your state's, what we want to say is like a public forum, but really is what we call like an open meeting, open meetings, open records. And so first, what state are you in, and do they allow you to turn off public comments? If you have no comments, is that fair to everybody? Or do you have to, if you're posting something of a matter of public concern, or if you're posting as a public entity, does it always have to be a public forum? And so you just have to look at your state. And then what kind of a shelter are you? Are you a private shelter? You receive no government funding and it's not a matter of public concern? Less strict on the rules of what you can do.
Great, thank you. We have a question from the audience, and they're asking, and if you could give background on this, I think, is there a difference between hiding a comment and deleting a comment on social media? So if you could explain what that difference is for anybody who doesn't know, and does it matter legally if it's a comment from a member of the public?
Yeah, so there's no difference between deleting it and hiding it in the case law that I read. And so if it's not viewable to the public, then it's stifling a public conversation. And so if you might as well delete it, I guess, from everything that I've read. And a lot of that stuff a lot of that case law, like I said, comes from COVID, and comes from budgetary hearings in other cities and public employees commenting on things. So yeah.
And another person in the audience is asking, do you have any examples of shelters that are doing a great job with their social media in Kansas or Missouri or Oklahoma? This is an anonymous attendee.
I think that my clients do a good job. with social media. And so, I gave some examples of those clients. But there's so much going on social media wise, so many posts a day and like stories and oh my gosh, I can't stories and reels and threads and actual posts and posts on Facebook and posts on Instagram and TikToks and everything. And so, it's really hard, especially if you have an entire social media team at your animal shelter. It's really hard to regulate all of that. So you kind of have to lay the groundwork and frame it like, okay, let's try and these are our goals. These are our policies. And one of the cases that I cited there is the Krasnow case. And one of the issues with that case is she was commenting on the University of Wisconsin's animal testing. And the university had decided to just filter out her comments. So they just like didn't allow her to comment or they would delete them. She was commenting on a matter of public concern. The biggest thing though was that they were doing it kind of haphazardly. It was applied only to her, which was a legal challenge. And then it was like, well, if she says this, then this, but like that same test wasn't applied to other commenters. And so one of the things that shelters should be aware of is making sure that whoever's managing your social media accounts, especially if you have a team, that everyone is operating under the same guidelines. Which I know can be really hard when you have a big organization and you are overstretched and you have, you are young. Why don't you do our social media? But also we have a marketing manager who will supervise you, who also can post on social media. Always we give the CEO access to social media, and then making sure that everyone is doing, enforcing the same policies can be hard.
Thank you for that. You talked about whether you're a public entity or not being very fact dependent and case specific, and I assume there are a lot of gray areas. Is it safer in those situations to just, err on the side of caution and to operate as if you're a public entity on social media?
The advice I give my clients, which I'm not giving you,
Yes.
the advice I give my clients is it is safer, especially if you even have one government contract. It really depends on the state. So you saw that definition of Missouri. Missouri is pretty clear on public forums, open records, open meetings. And that's what the definition there is like, are you performing a public function? Is your point, is the reason you were organized to enter into a contract with the city to run their animal shelter? Basically says that in Missouri. Kansas is different. Kansas does not have that same language. And so and Kansas is like leans more heavily on open records than open meetings. And so your public forum is more of an open meetings type test. And so it is just so state specific and fact specific to your animal shelter. You'll just need to find an attorney in your area who can look that up for you. But always, for the FTC and for the public forum, I recommend to my clients err on the side of you being a public entity.
Great, thank you. We have an attendee who's asking, and you and I had discussed this, so I think I know the answer, if the slide deck will be available afterwards as a PDF, and if so, how can folks access that?
Yes, it will be available. And I have to be honest, I don't know how to give people access.
So we will figure that out. Your email address was on the last slide, so I assume folks can reach out to you directly, and then we
Absolutely.
can work with the video. I think we can perhaps also include it with the video, which will be on YouTube following the event. See if we do have time, a little bit of time, if there are any other questions. We'll give it a moment. And if not, we can wrap things up. We have lots of thank yous for you, Katie, in the chat. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the session. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're grateful also to everyone at the American Bar Association who helped to put on today's event, and of course to you, Katie, for the excellent presentation. We do have one more session in our Animal Shelter Law Summer Series. Please join us on August 13th from 12 to 1 p.m. Central for recent developments in animal shelter law. And as with today's session, that lunch and learn is free and open to the public, and it will be recorded so that we can share it afterwards. We hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.